Are you aspiring to the office of the CFO? Are you about to take on a new role as CFO, perhaps in your own organization or another? Or maybe you've been a CFO for a while and want to take a fresh look at your function or validate your approach. It's my hope to give you a glimpse into those first 100 days. My name is Blair Cook, and I'm a 3-time CFO and continue serving in the capacity as a corporate director for a number of companies. I've experienced and observed these first 100 days several times already during my career. In this course, I'll share with you some of the successes, failures, and lessons learned. In the courses I develop for live and online learning, my area of specialization is the path to and the role of the CFO. In this 1-hour course, we're going to cover a lot of ground at a level of depth that is hopefully both insightful and practical to your needs. Let me give you a brief preview of what's to come. In our first lesson, we're going to look at the competencies of the modern CFO. What does this role entail? What skills do you need? What value does the CFO bring to the organization? These are attributes that you need to develop leading up to and after your appointment. It's a very personal, introspective view of ourselves. In our second lesson, once you're appointed CFO, you will need to assess the situation. Some of you will be fortunate enough to inherit a well-oiled machine, though quite often that's not the case. The finance function is always evolving, so even if it is serving the needs of the organization today, the CFO has to consider the future in making this overall assessment. We will look at a maturity model that you can use to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your finance function. In our third lesson, we will talk about building high-performance finance teams that deliver results. We will look at a few team-building principles. We will also look at an easy-to-use framework to specify the skills and competencies of the finance function. In our fourth lesson, let's talk about a strategic plan for the finance function. We will discuss how you can use strategic management principles to align your finance team with the objectives of the organization. I use mission and value statements along with an action plan to set up the right sorts of conversation with my staff. In our fifth lesson, we will look at structuring the finance function. Every CFO is confronted with the age-old dilemma of balancing off centralization and control with getting closer to the operational activity. We'll discuss some ideas. And finally, let's talk about change management. Perhaps you need to transition the organization for new growth, or new systems, or new processes. These are no small undertakings. So, understanding change management principles will prepare you before embarking on a major new project. I guarantee that knowing a few principles before you begin will save you the frustration and provide you guidance when you need it most. So this is a rather tall agenda to fill in just 1 hour. But if you only have an hour to get briefed on what you've got yourself into, then this is the course that's designed to give you enough to formulate a game plan to get through your first 100 days. Leadership qualities are an individual trait. There's more than one type of approach to leadership that can lead to a successful outcome. So I'm not naive enough to suggest that there's only one way to approach your first 100 days. In fact, in each of the CFO roles I've held, the context was different. My first CFO role was in the context of a turnaround. My second was more of a cleanup and stewardship role. My third CFO role required me to build a finance team to meet the demands of public company reporting. But the approach and the methods discussed in this course are broadly applicable and I believe will spawn ideas for you to get started. In terms of an overall approach, I believe that you first build inward strength and then expand your sphere of influence outward from there. This means assessing our own personal competency as it stands today and where it needs to be a successful CFO. This sort of self-assessment gives us a list of areas for self-improvement. Gaps will also be supplemented by recruitment and development of your team. As your thinking broadens further, you will consider the role of finance inside your organization, which inevitably leads us to consider the role of finance in supporting the organization in a much broader marketplace, which includes relationships with investors and analysts and lenders and customers and suppliers. While this may appear sequential, it really is not. Think of it more as a prioritization. I focus much of my first 100 days on ensuring that the inner layers are well developed and aligned before I start making promises and commitments to the outer layers. Click on the first lesson to begin your journey through the first 100 days as CFO.
Welcome back, and I'm glad you've decided to come along on this journey with me. We have much to cover, so let's get right to it. In this lesson, we're going to survey what competencies the modern CFO embodies. So in the schematic of how I approach development of the finance function, this lesson will focus on us, the CFO. In later lessons, we will work outwards to our team and then to the role of our team inside and external to the organization. A number of really smart people have studied the role, competencies, and skill of the modern CFO. The findings between various studies are generally consistent. For our purposes of this presentation, I'm going to use a study that was done by Queen's University and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Ontario in Canada. The eggheads who performed the study looked at literature on CFO competencies and then administered a survey to C-suite executives to reach their overall findings. There are 4 thematic areas that the CFO embodies. The first is the steward role, which is perhaps the most traditional and recognizable role of finance. A steward generally represents the minimum threshold for a senior financial professional and includes mastery over such matters as financial reporting and internal controls. The operator role is one of leading an effective and efficient finance function. The strategist and catalyst roles are growing in importance and are responsibilities that are closely shared with the CEO. However, these are roles which many CFOs seek to participate but find it hard to do so given the amount of time they spend on the steward and operator roles. The research study's findings suggest, not surprisingly, that experience is the best way to develop true competency. However, professional education like this course, along with sponsorship and mentorship, are also important elements of your professional development to consider. My suggestion to you is to use this competency map throughout your career to become or improve your professional leadership skills in the CFO role. You can also map to identify areas of personal weakness. Then seek out professional development or experiential opportunities to reinforce or improve your proficiency. Let's take a few moments to look at the 4 areas in a little more depth so you can get an indication of what the ideal modern CFO should bring to the role. Beginning with the stewardship competencies, the research identified that, as one might expect, the CFO possesses a working knowledge of risk management, budgeting, and forecasting. Also, the CFO possesses knowledge of investment and credit risk. It's no surprise that the CFO has a proficiency in accounting knowledge and taxation. But don't mistake accounting knowledge as the same thing as financial reporting. Financial reporting is broader and includes external financials as well as other information that gets released, including MD&As and internal control reports, etc. The CFO also needs to appreciate information systems and informational needs of decision makers. Now, this is a key way in which CFOs add value to the organization. The CFO often oversees systems, processes, and internal controls across the enterprise. The modern CFO understands the business environment context, which is so important if you want the finance function to participate in decision making and operations management. The CFO is often the unspecified champion of fraud prevention, detection, and investigation. And finally, the CFO plays an integral role in corporate governance, including an ability to institutionalize best practices, creating a culture of excellence and ethical performance. Next, let's look at the competencies of the operator CFO. This group of competencies focuses on the achievement of economy and efficiency, in meeting a service level commitment within the finance department and across the organization. The specific competencies include the CFO conducts staff planning to attract and retain top financial talent, staff management, including an ability to empower, team build, establish accountability. The CFO is often a leader in identifying, developing, and overseeing projects which need to be delivered on time and on budget. Corporate finance marries together strategic goals with financial measurement to ensure that operating decisions maximize value and are adequately funded. Treasury and investment management includes the execution and ongoing management of various financial instruments, including cash, investments, debt, and equity. The CFO should be a key player in mergers and acquisition type activity, from providing due diligence support to negotiating a fair value and appropriate terms that optimize the strategic elements. Outsourcing is a common functional strategy, but the CFO is often a key stakeholder in making the decision on which function to outsource and which to retain.